Ex-analysts, empowering analysts, transforming markets.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Exploring the Energy Markets podcast series. We are living in a time of a crisis in West Asia, and there are big milestones or important meetings happening between US and China, which could shape the entire energy landscape going forward. To put a spotlight on energy, to put a spotlight on geopolitics, and special focus on how India has navigated the energy dynamics, my guest today is Narendra Taneja. He's a global thought leader on all topics energy, geopolitics, security. He's the chairman of Independent Energy Policy Institute, think tank based in New Delhi in India. Narendra is a key voice in the media. Narendra is a well-traveled man, having spent multiple years across the globe in conferences, in various engagements. He's a well-connected man in the corporate world, as well as having spent quite some time understanding the political side of India as well. I'm going to dive deep on some of the thematic, some of the current topics, but also the podcast will try to build a perspective. How do we understand the chaos, somehow the messiness of what we see around? Can we build a picture? Let's explore what that silver lining of this crisis would mean, not just for Middle East, for India, but for the entire globe. Welcome, Narendra. Welcome to the Exploring the Energy Markets podcast. There is so much happening around with the latest US president trip happening to China. I think India has navigated the crisis so far well. There's a lot to talk about what's next. And also to explore, given your long heritage in the country, in the geopolitics and the energy sector, not just India, but global, I would like to ask you, how do you see some of the future outlooks, some tactical strategies which government and people should do? So there's a lot to talk, Narendra, but before I jump into that, I do want to ask you, I've given an introduction about you, but how would you want to present a little bit about yourself?
Well, Mukesh, that's a good question. First of all, thanks for having me. About me, all I know is that I'm very passionate about energy sector as a whole. All things that I'm interested in. I'm interested in geopolitics. I'm interested in policy making, policy formulations. I'm interested in different geographies. I'm interested in natural resources, and I'm interested in business management to strategies. And I'm interested in how boards work and how boards think, how corporations work and corporations think, and how they shape the world. So how big businesses and government, they shape the world, shape our future, shape the future of the planet, for the present generation, but most importantly for future generations. And I find that energy is one sector. If you look at energy holistically, is one area, one sector, or call it one business, depending on how you look at it, where you have all that I'm interested in. Big money, big business, core, the backbone of the global economy, backbone of Indian economy. And at the same time, if you look around the world and see how humans lived 400 years ago, and now the role of energy and oil and gas in particular has been so important that without fossil fuels, all that we have seen, the transformation of human life the last 200 years, and the kind of life that we enjoy today, including modern medicines and computers and AI, probably wouldn't have happened without oil and gas. So I'm among those who look upon oil and gas, when people demonize oil and gas and say only green energy and oil is dirty, coal is dirty, gas is dirty, fossil fuels are dirty. I feel, that when we talk like that, we are being ungrateful to the very source that basically has transformed our life and given us the longevity and the kind of life we enjoy today. So we should be grateful to oil. We should be grateful to gas. We should be grateful to coal, because without these sources of energy, we as humans wouldn't have been where we are today, enjoying this great life and working on energy transition, energy transformation.
You bring a very important point, Narendra. Indeed, if we didn't have the wood age, we will not come to the next stage. So I think it's a spectrum and evolution, part of our evolution, that the energy is key and we need to go from different forms of energy. And you rightly said that once we demonize one energy, then suddenly it kind of impedes the human progress. With that in mind, Hormuz crisis, Iran conflict, Ukraine conflict, there is lots going around. I want to really start. India is a big country and really, huge foreign exchange exposure as well, given this kind of a situation. What in your mind, Narendra, to set the context and the scene for this podcast are probably the top three, top four forces which are shaping India's energy sector today?
Well, this, Mukesh, is a very, very important question. In fact, you asked me the core question and the core challenge that India is facing today. When you look at the geographical parking of India, we enjoy really great parking. We have got the, west on the, we've got the Gulf and the Europe on the one side, that is the west. And at the same time, we have got Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, China on the other side. We are sitting right at the very center. So we enjoy an extremely, geographically speaking, a very privileged kind of position. And as you know, that India geography and our soil, mountains and everything, we are so hugely blessed. However, what we don't have, what many other countries have, like Iran and Russia and Saudi Arabia, we are not so blessed in terms of, hydrocarbons in particular. And therefore, and at the same time, for next 20 years, we have to become a bigger economy, like $20 trillion economy. We need more oil, we need more gas, we need more coal. Because renewable, we are doing very, very well, exceptionally well. If you compare what we have achieved the last 5-10 years is much better than most countries, developed countries have managed to achieve. However, that said, at the same time, we have all these renewable energy, green energy, including nuclear. We still have large number of people who are living below energy poverty line, roughly. And therefore, we need more energy for them. Per capita energy consumption in India is among the lowest in the world. So renewable energy is great. What we have done is great, but it's only supplementing fossil fuels. It's not going to replace fossil fuel for a long time to come, maybe 25 years. Yeah. So therefore, I think it's important that, as I said, we are not that blessed. So now look what's happening in the Persian Gulf area or in the Middle East, or we prefer to call it West Asia, as you know. So what is happening in the Middle East is horrifying for us, because we are heavily dependent on that region for our oil and gas and even fertilizer. And at the same time, we have got 10 million Indians living and working there, 10 million. And they send, of course, among other things, good wishes and all that. They also send serious amount of, remittances, which play a very important, which play a very, very important role in our economy. Typically, if there are 10 million people in the Gulf region, Indians. So, and if you look at the number of people who are dependent on them or remittances they send for their economy, for their survival, we are talking of maybe about 40 million people, if not more. So you see, so in such a situation, what is happening there is very, very disturbing, to say the least. At the same time, all these countries, majority of them are our good friends. Saudi Arabia is a great friend. Iran is our civilizational friend. As you know, Iran is an Aryan country like us, like Afghanistan or Pakistan. They are not Arabs, and very close to us, civilizationally speaking. And with Arab countries, we have always had great relations. If you look at India's history, I mean, we have been trading with Arab countries long for centuries. In fact, so what's happening there is very disturbing for us. And we think that, if there is this kind of geopolitical disruption there, it's a bad news for us economically, because we have a large number of people living there, and our economies are quite integrated. If you look at economy of the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and are quite integrated. So I think very, very disturbing for us, very disrupting at the same time.
I think you made some excellent points, Narendra, and I think if I bring them together, I think we are blessed with geography. I think that's one, but we are not blessed with, let's say, the hydrocarbon resources. But given the geography and being next to the Middle East is an advantage. And I think you brought a very important aspect of the people connections and how remittance work, right? Want to choose between the partners in the Middle East. We have good relations with probably all of us, all of them, and not just relations economically, but culturally. So how do you see now, given the next week event is all eyes on US and China, and whether they do a deal or whether they don't do a deal? I sometimes call that what has happened in Venezuela was because of Venezuela was selling to China. What happens in Iran was selling to China. So all the advantages were going to China. And that's why US has been kind of circling by Venezuela, Iran, Russia. In all of this, how do you see impacting India?
Well, in case that's
goes.
That's a very, very important and interesting question. You see, what is China today? China is an economic powerhouse, no doubt about it. China has done economically very, very well. But China is China thanks to the United States, because United States and Western country, they outsource their manufacturing to China. And China used it very smartly. And thanks to that, China actually is what China is today. Had they not outsourced manufacturing, Western Europe and the United States and Canada and these OECD countries, then the history of China would have been very, very different. Look at data from 1980. China's economy was smaller than India. Look at China's major oil company. They were much smaller than India's oil companies, for that matter. Now, the thing is, they used it very smartly, and they've done very well, economically speaking. But I am among those who don't buy this theory that is G2 summit, in the sense that two great powers and China. I don't buy it. China is done economically very well, but to call China a great power or at par with the United States, or that is a G2 summit, China is highly overrated by many, especially many in the West. And this President Trump is the one who started talking about G2 summit, is to massage the ego. But at the same time, when you think what President Trump is trying to do very carefully, why did he go to Venezuela for oil, but also to throw China out of Latin America? What else?
Correct.
Why why Trump has gone after Iran? Why is active in the Persian Gulf area again? To check whom? To check China. What else? Of course, cheap oil.
No, I agree with you.
Exactly. So I think so this, we know all this happening, but at the same time, what we have also seen the last 2 months since the war started in the Gulf, the United States is not what the United States used to be in terms of military power, in terms of its stamina to be a global, I hate to use this term, but to be a global policeman or a hegemon. Let me use hegemon. I think it's losing appetite, and is losing the foresight. Therefore, that's worries majority of democracies, India included, India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Southeast democracies in Southeast Asia, and even Israel and Europe. It worries us, because right now the world is not really ready for United States to grow so weak in the Gulf that it can't protect, its own economic and strategic interest in the Gulf area.
And their allies.
But that's happening now. That is happening in our neighborhood. It's happening in the area which is still critically important and crucial for the global oil supply system. Stability in the global oil markets still. So now, what do you do? So therefore, America has tried. We have seen they're trying, and they haven't succeeded. So that's worrying. And at the same time, the summit in China is, my own sense is that is probably to basically guess what China is trying to do. At the same time, to cut some kind of deal with China, which might help the United States. But my own sense is that, what has started happening, America growing weak, and the unipolar world that we have seen since 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and America emerged as the world's hegemon, that is beginning to, that's now soon going to be history. We are already seeing the kind of, in a way, the United States, vacating that space, or not being there anymore. But at the same time, a multipolar world which we are going to witness in 20 years from now, that's going to be about, not only about the United States. United States will continue to be important, but the US very important. But United States kind of role will be limited to North Atlantic and Western Hemisphere. Then we will see the emergence of United States of Europe. United Europe. Brussels is going to be the second most important capital in the planet. Moscow, Russia, they may have a small population, but the size is big, and they're good in science and technology. They're very good in natural resources, and they're very good in defense preparedness. So Moscow will be the third important pole. And then China will be a very important, and the fourth very important, not necessarily in this order. I'm just listing the poles. So then Beijing is going to be a very important pole, and then New Delhi. Very, very important role. So these countries are basically multipolar, will be more about India, China, Russia, United States of Europe, and United States of America. And basically the energy, when you look at the history, it all starts with energy. It all starts with energy. And what you kind of, you are seeing a turmoil, a kind of tsunami in the global energy order. It's basically is the beginning of the big change, which will eventually, it started with the energy, because energy is at the bottom, at the core of practically everything, including geopolitics.
Well, I think you again made such a subtle nuanced point, which I believe often gets missed. There is that one, this is not G2. And I think the second point that you made, that US became US because of the institutions and the weakening of institutions. And if somehow, US is not able to, let's say, get the right things in order with China, it's a cause for concern for a lot of countries around. So I think this deal at this point of time might not mean much, but whether it paves the path for a multipolar world, that is probably more important to watch than this G2 overhyped kind of a deal. That's kind of your main point. Now, if I then think of, this summit is happening, we are hearing a lot of things, and I don't know what impact it will have on Iran. Either way, so far it looks like that something which was supposed to be over in 2 weeks is now in a long, like we have seen Ukraine also. I hope this doesn't become the next Ukraine. In that situation, what do you think India, which has navigated, in my mind, when I look at the Vortexa data, the trade flow data, refining analysis, Indian refineries have done very well in navigating and making more LPG, for example. Indian refineries have run hard also, and then we have been able to secure crude from alternate sources. But at this point of time, what are your expectations that how will Indian government respond, given your long history of the country, of the geo and the politics? What are your expectations of the government will do next?
Well, you see, Mukesh, for us in India, for us, oil is very, very important. Hydrocarbons in general is still the backbone of Indian economy. We are an oil economy, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I mean, we are doing very well in renewable energy, as I said earlier. But however, we need more oil. For us, what is energy security? For us, for India, energy security is securing supply of oil, supply of gas, supply of coal, and supply of uranium, and also equipment for renewable energy, like cells and panels and so on. We buy bulk of that from China, as you know. So for us, energy security is basically securing the supply. But look at Saudi Arabia. What is energy security for Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates? Energy security is securing demand.
Yes.
Demand for oil, demand for gas. For Qatar is securing demand for. So which means that basically same energy security, but definitions are different. Goals are different. Policies are different. They are there to secure demand. We are here to secure supply. And that's basically in India, we are now trying to leverage. How do we do that? So in a situation like this, when disruption is there, when the prices are going high, when we talk with the Saudis or when we talk with the Emiratis, we say, look at the long term. India today is driving the demand. When you look at the incremental growth, I mean, we are driving the demand for oil in the world.
Yeah, your energy security is driven by our energy security.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are driving the demand. I mean, we are today import 5.2 million barrels of oil every day, and very soon we are going to be importing 6.5 million barrels of oil per day, whether we like it or not. If you want to sustain 8%, 7.5% growth rate, you need more oil because the population is expanding, because the middle class is expanding, because the economy is expanding. So from 5.3 million barrels oil per day imports today, we are going to touch 6.5 million barrels before we know it. And I think, if we keep on expanding and our aim to be Viksit Bharat or developed India or to be $20 trillion economy ASAP, this is not going to happen without oil. And in 25 years from now, probably we're going to consume 9 million barrels of oil per day. And bulk of that is going to come from where? From these countries, only the big suppliers, including the United States and Russia and Venezuela, Brazil, and so on, and Guyana and other countries. So that's the thing. Now, the question is that, can we leverage it? Vis-a-vis, let's say, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, the United States, Russia. The time has come for us to actually focus more on how do we leverage this, because they need us more than we need them.
So your point is, how do we leverage our strength, which is our demand, to align and create our energy security by talking to these players who probably need more. And as we do more energy transition, India might be one of the topmost destinations for oil. And that's the leverage we need to put forward. That's the leverage government should do.
Mukesh, I just add one point here. India is one country where oil is never demonized. Never. And we know, we are very clear about it, that we need more. We use oil and fossil fuel without any kind of bad conscience. I mean, you may have a few people in Delhi and Bombay and all that. I'm not talking about that. But vast majority in India, we want more oil because we know we need it for our growth. We're not thinking, for instance, 20, 30 years at the level of the people. We're thinking more about growth, more about development, more about opportunity. So so that's one thing. The second thing is that we are setting up more refineries. We are setting up more refineries. As we talk, in fact, the plan is to have two more refineries. Rajasthan has been just commissioned, more or less, and two more. Then the talks are on for to set up two more refineries later. So we're talking of four, mega refineries in the country, because we are a global refining superpower and we want to be even bigger. We want to take advantage of our geographical parking. At the same time, we know it very well that that gives us certain advantage in terms of our exports, hard currency earnings, but also it gives us advantage in terms of being a supplier. For instance, we import crude from the United Arab Emirates, but we also supply products. We import crude from America. We also supply products to the United States of America. So, and many other countries, as you know. So I think this is a kind of thing that we are very much focusing on. But at the same time, we are kind of a leader in terms of solar power. We are headquarters of International Solar Alliance, which is an intergovernmental organization where we are promoting renewable energy more aggressively than any other country that I can think of.
Fascinating. Narendra, now you reminded me when you said oil is not demonized in India. I started my career in an oil refinery at Panipat in India. I worked across the globe. I used to still remember the slogans, "Tel hi Jeevan hai." So, in that sense, I think you perfectly brought that point. And as India expands the footprint of refining, so it's kind of supply security versus demand security. And I think it looks like to me that the suppliers need to secure more demand, then the demand people need to worry about the supply. Fascinating, point, Narendra. Now, I hadn't thought about like this, and that triggers me, a different kind of a question. When we look at India from outside, from a Western lens, I've also lived across the globe. You have traveled across the globe. I know I was reading about you. You were in Norway. What analyst from that side of the world get it wrong about India?
Oh, that's a very good question. As you mentioned that I spent many years in Norway studying and working, and it's a beautiful country. I've even spent about a year in the Arctic Circle, very close to the North Pole, and I loved it. I've written a book about Norway. I made a film about Norway for Indian television called Doordarshan, and I still go there often. Norway is like my second home. Beautiful country, lovely. I love Norway, and however, at the same time. Many of them are my good friends, and they are in some very, very important key positions in that country, in government, in oil sector, and shipping, finance, and all that. But I can share my experience with you that do they really understand India? Probably not. I mean, do the Europeans mostly, do they understand India? Probably not. They just look at India the way they want to look at. So they very often, majority of these companies, including big corporations, they look at India with their own glasses. I always tell them, when I'm often invited to address these kind of gatherings, address boards and address, the top leadership in these companies in the Western part of the world. And I always tell them that if you're serious about, first of all, if you're not in India, you can never call yourself a global corporation unless and until you are physically present in India. If you're not in India, you're not a global corporation. Number two,
That's a very
and number two, that if you're not in India, you're basically not secured your future, because India is not only present, India is also the future. We are going to be the second largest economy according to Western organizations like PwC and many others, by 2050, together at par with the United States, with second largest economy in the world. So if you're not in India, you're basically not taking good care of your future as a corporation. Number three is that, when you come to India, whether you're coming in oil and gas sector, renewable energy sector, for that matter, any sector of Indian economy, and you basically looking at India just like a girlfriend you're taking out for an evening, that doesn't work in India. If you're serious about India, be serious, think long term, and marry India. You succeed in India as a corporation, as a business, only when you marry India. Marry India means you are there, come what may, you're long term. I think, that's India. And moreover, those who compare India with China non-stop, I think completely wrong. We're two different planets. Our culture is different. We're different people. We look at nature differently. We look at humans differently. We look at governance differently. We look at Indian Ocean differently. We look at China very differently, the way they look at themselves. And we look at our neighborhood very differently. We look at Middle East differently. For instance, I think there are things which Western corporations, Western businesses need to understand. That when you're coming to a country like India, you are not coming only to geography, you're coming to a civilization. Understand, don't try to change us, don't try to judge us, because you may not be very well equipped to understand us, or maybe very not well equipped to judge us. Take it as we are, understand, spend time with us. And if you're truly serious about building your future, a secure future for your corporations, you have to come to India. You have to invest in India. You have to marry India. If you're not doing all this, you're not protecting, securing your own future.
Wow, very well said. That to come to India, to stay in India, and not just for some few bucks or some short time kind of ventures there. And that's where the true success would like. And you just can't see India from a stock that you buy once and then you sell very soon. It is a long term. Very nice. Now, in that context, I also learn about that you are also been very heavily involved in being an independent think tank. You're part of multiple think tanks of or even the political side as well as the non-political side of it. At this point of time, right, what do you think? What are your projections? How the world will evolve? Maybe we don't know which way the world will go, but what kind of projections or trajectories or scenarios we should look for that US-China will do a deal, and then this will settle the Middle East, and then India gets its chance to come back and grow both the oil and the non-oil. What kind of trajectories or scenarios come to your mind? How would you paint that picture?
Well, I mean, the US and China, this summit or maybe later, they may cut some kind of, arrangements, call it deal, call it by any name. But the fact remains that the way the US look at the world and the way China look at world are very, very different, very, very different. China basically wants to see the world without the United States. And they think, they're ready to lead the world. And in China, when you say lead, because they don't understand democracy, they don't understand liberal world order, they don't understand that you got to respect others. So therefore their worldview is very, very, I don't blame them. The political system is very different. But what China has done economically, I admire it. But at the same time, the United States, they look at China very differently. They look at China as a challenge, and they look at China. But the question is that they may think so, but the United States need to kind of reconstruct itself, rebuild itself. They enjoyed great relationship with Western Europe. They're destroying it. I mean, instead of strengthening and expanding your goodwill footprint, you're destroying what you had built over the past 75 years since the end of the Second World War. What kind of wisdom is that? And at the same time, China very quietly, China thinks 40 years ahead, 30 years ahead. And China very quietly is building up from they build economy. Now they're building their military strength and investing heavily in technology and so on and so forth, including artificial intelligence and more than that, the war technology or defense technology and so forth. So therefore, I think they're going. Either the United States in 10, 15 years from now would have to say, all right, you take care of this region and we're going to focus more on the Western Hemisphere or Atlantic and some other parts of the world. So therefore, when we look at the world from New Delhi and what is happening between China and the United States, and at the same time, so it's actually, when I look at it, the next 20 years horizon, geopolitically speaking, geoeconomically speaking, I see a lot of blood. I see violence. I see darkness. I see more Ukraines. I see more Irans. I see more Gazas. I see more, conflict. I think, this is going to be a massive, massive, geopolitical turbulence involving multiple wars over the next 20 years before the world settles down to a new world order, a multipolar world, and new international energy order. Look at international energy order. Just until before Ukraine happened, there was some kind of international energy order. People were paying in dollars. Even if you're buying oil from wherever, you were paying in dollars. There was some kind of equilibrium, some kind of stability. International Energy Agency was not the most, because they take care of only the interests of the OECD countries, the rich country. Still, people listen to them. People, OPEC was doing what OPEC was as a cartel was supposed to do. All that since then Ukraine happened, and the Western countries, they weaponized oil. They used oil as a weapon. asking countries like India, don't import from Russia, don't do this and all that, to going to the extent the Russians were basically completely blocked out of the international financial system. And then the China took advantage of it. So you strengthen China, and at the same time, what is happening now in the Middle East, the end beneficiary, the biggest beneficiary is China. Who else? So now the thing is, with this kind of situation, India has no option but to play smart and mostly to use talk only when we need to, go for a strategic, silence wherever required, and at the same time, slowly buy your time and focus on building your economy. India has no option but to focus on building its economy first, and then slowly building your own universe. India has no option. We are too big to be follower of the United States or this block and that block. We have to build our own universe, and the universe which is based on a very different principles than the United States and then China. A principle where other countries can come and join hand with us, whether you are from global south or from some other parts of the world. I think we are well in its way. When you look at our economy, despite what has happened in the Persian Gulf, India has done reasonably well. We have shown some resilience. There are, of course, challenges since we are so heavily dependent on imports, especially for energy and also exports. However, I think the way we are going about it and the kind of national consensus we have on this, talk to the most ordinary Indian on the street, and they want to see India to be a kind of golden bird once again.
You're right in that sense that I think given the people across the world, India, whether I've traveled to, as you say, Norway to a lot and places work for companies like reshaped Energy there, and your good friend Vyarand as well. So I think looking from that kind of a global picture, I also lived in the US for quite some time and now living in Australia. I think there is a lot more culture in India, and also we bring culture back to rest of the world. So, but the point, I think, the scenario you're painting ahead, Narendra, is that there are two kind of scenarios where American institutions are strong and great again, then they can bring much more better world order. If the American institution strength is weakening, as we have seen, then you see more chaos, more violence, and more turbulence. And in these scenarios, India as a country has to really leverage its demand kind of as a tool, and then navigate it very smartly, and not follow China, not follow US, not follow anyone, but follow our national sort of India's national interest. And that's what we India has done in the Ukraine crisis of the Middle East. That's the path, probably come what may, whichever scenario the wind blows, India as a country has to continue progressing. I think that's the kind of sum total. Did I get it right, Narendra?
Well, almost. You see, the thing is, the United States, a weak United States is not in our interest. We want to see a strong United States.
Strong United States.
And we want to see a strong Europe. The Europe which outsource energy to Russia, outsource manufacturing to China, outsource security to the United States, not a good thing. We would like to see a strong Europe. If you look at the coal data, the second largest economy in the world, and President Trump should get it right, is not China, it's Europe. It is Europe. And we would like to see Europe actually to be more assertive. Europe has to get back to manufacturing. They should learn, enough of wine and cheese. They should go back to, manufacturing. They should soil their hand.
Yes.
They have to invest more in manufacturing. They have to invest more in defense. And they have to kind of show more kind of fire in their belly, and show more ambition. A strong Europe, the second largest economy and second largest military force, is in the interest of India, is in the interest of democracies of the world. We want to see the US to continue to be strong. We want to see Europe to actually be strong. And the second largest, militarily powerful, economically powerful, manufacturing everything from needle to aircraft. That kind of Europe is in our interest. Because strong Europe would mean a stable Middle East, and a stable Middle East means, secure supplies of oil and gas. And at the same time, democracies like Europe, the United States, Japan, Southeast Asia, like Australia and Vietnam, and then India, and Russia at the same time being somewhere in between. I think that's the kind of world that's going to make sure, there is a new international energy order, which is more democratic, more stable, more sustainable, and at the same time, more opportunities for India actually to grow and grow a little bit more peacefully. But as I said, next 20 years are going to be kind of very, very tricky, very violent, but I think we should be preparing for it.
Well, maybe at the end of this podcast, I think we covered quite a lot of, I think you painted a lot of historical context to really think the future about. Narendra, I would want to ask you, all of that would happen once we resolve the crisis in West Asia. Do you have a view? Do you have a projection to share? Why you believe it will end soon? Why you don't believe it will end soon? Where do you put your thumb on?
Well, what is happening, Mukesh, is we are seeing the rise of a new Middle East.
Mhm.
The Middle East that we have got used to, we have known for decades now, that's probably is soon going to be history. When I say new Middle East, in the sense the major oil producing countries in the Persian Gulf area, they have now realized that they can't depend only on the US beyond a point for their security. They still need the US, and the US must stay put there. However, they also have to look at other countries, in order to make sure that their future is secure, their security is there, and their economic security is there. And therefore, I think they have started looking at other countries. And they had started looking, for instance, at India with a lot of interest, countries like the United Arab Emirates, for instance. And they have started looking at Germany and France and Japan. Therefore, we're going to see a very, very new, different Middle East.
Mm.
We just noticed, Mukesh, that UAE has, gone out, opted out of OPEC.
OPEC, yeah.
That's a strategic decision, because they want to realize their full potential they have as an oil exporter and the gas exporter. They don't want any policemen, and they were not getting anything from OPEC. The result is going to see that we are going to see closer energy ties between India and the United Arab
Mhm.
Emirates. I'm among those who are promoting this idea in Delhi. I'm sharing with you, Mukesh. I'm
Mhm.
promoting this idea that we should build two subsea pipelines from Fujairah to India for oil and gas, both subsea pipeline, so that Strait of Hormuz is no longer relevant or not important. So we have and similarly we are working on some other idea, and hopefully Iran will open up and Indian companies will be able to go back and invest together with Western companies and so on. So therefore their dependence on China will come down. So we're going to see a very, very different and new Middle East. But it's important for that America plays its cards well. America is not playing its cards well. Europe get more involved in the Middle East. But that said, at the same time, I think we're going to see a new Middle East, and new Middle East is going to throw up new opportunities in terms of oil, in terms of gas, in terms of investment, in terms of artificial intelligence. So therefore, I think today it looks like very messy, but my sense is that the new Middle East is going to be different. It's not going to be one Middle East. They're going to see several Middle Easts. And we're going to see there is one GCC. We might see some other alignments. There will be multiple new alignments. So what is going to come out of all this turmoil that we are seeing, that we're going to see a new Middle East, we're going to see a new Iran, we're going to see a new UAE, we probably are going to see new Saudi Arabia also. The entire region is going to go through a big, big, big change. This is a churn that what we're witnessing. In India, we call it Hindi, we call it manthan, but this is geopolitical manthan. Out of that will come out, and I'm sure that out of that will also come out something which will benefit these countries of the region, but also benefit India. Look at the map carefully. Middle East, what is Middle East? Middle East is one area that connects India with Europe. That's why we are talking of India, Middle East Economic Corridor. Middle East connect India with Africa, which is continent of the future. This century belongs to Africa. 2050 and beyond, India, China will need Africa to sustain their growth. Africa is the future. And Middle East is one area, the junction that connects India with Europe, it connects with Africa. Therefore, what is happening there, we got to take a view 50 years from now, and then you find it's so interesting what's going. It looks very unpleasant, very, very messy, but the new Middle East hopefully is going to be very different from the way we have looked at Middle East since the end of Second World War.
And maybe I think what you're pointing out, if I understand a bit more deeply, Narendra, is that it's not the outside forces out of Middle East that will settle the wars and the conflicts. It is this
Yes.
collective shared destiny, this
Exactly.
view once every Middle East country starts to think of the new Middle East, which has to realize its full potential and understand the advantage they sit on. That's where probably the crisis will end, not because what divides them, but what unites them. And that looks like to me a little bit longer process, which might take a bit more time rather than just getting sorted over some two-party kind of deals.
Well, energy, look at energy. The first conference that happened on peak oil was in New York in 1931. And still there is no peak oil. So in the sense that, when we look at energy and when we look at geopolitics and we are looking at using our, a crystal ball, talking of 20 or 30 years, it's like tomorrow morning. 20, 30 years in the world of energy is nothing. It's just like tomorrow morning. So that's how I look at it. It's not
Well,
about
I
me.
think you're not,
It's about
you're painting a quite a constructive and a positive picture. You're not creating any fiction. I think that's what is needed. That's what would happen. But before I let you go, Narendra, I do know that you think about these complex subjects, but you also think about some fiction. So before you go, tell us a little bit about, do you only write about geopolitics, energy, and there are some other interests?
Well, energy is my passion. As I said, that energy gives me every single thing that I'm interested in. So it gives me energy as is like gives me what I am today, has given me what I am today. So I'm utterly grateful to the energy sector, and I'm very, very passionate about it. Never tired. If you discuss, I can discuss energy with you non-stop for 365 days. So, however, when I'm heavily into fiction and poetry and nature. And so whenever I have free time, I write to relax. I write fiction. I write short stories. I've just my first novel called Sabina has just come out. It's a full blown novel, which is just come. It's going to be formally launched soon, and hopefully its French translation should also be out in a couple of years. It's under work. A Hindi translation is also under work. And at the same time, whenever I get time, I write poems, and I go out and have conversation with nature.
I believe bring some grounding, some perspective. And I hope what you're all describing
But
is not...
before I let you go, Mukesh, let me ask you, you are asking me all the questions. Let me ask you, I know you have spent a lot of time in different parts of the world, and Europe and America and all that. But what do you do, Mukesh, to relax?
Well, I think I get energy from my energy markets kind of analysis. For me, I kind of try to live with the principle that you have to live with ease in all the chaos that's happening around. So not going to a beach or a mountain gives the ease. You have to find the ease in all that's happening around. And I practice meditation for that, Narendra, and really find a lot of creativity in my thoughts and ideas that comes from it. Yes, I'm an avid watcher of Indian, cinema as well, songs, music. That's where my kind of go-to place. And I play a lot of badminton as well. So those are kind of my areas to do.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Well, I think you're right. There are lots of energy on the topic, and I think very timely conversation away from the noise. I think you gave our viewers a perspective, a way to think about the future and this collective destiny. We just hope that next week, what happens with US and China is not just a small deal, but maybe a U-turn from what we have seen, the chaos in the world, and the institutional strength across the globe improves. And I think that's what will pave for the way for the new Middle East, which I'm really excited to see come through. With that, I will really want to thank you. What an honor, what a privilege, Narendra, to have a person of your caliber on my podcast. I think certainly more to do next. Thank you very much, Narendra.
Sure. Thank you, Mukesh. Thanks for having me. And thanks very much to your team. Thank you.
Ex-analysts. Empowering analysts. Transforming markets.